What's going on, beautiful J4 community and family? Whether you are a subscriber or just a cloud observer, thank you so much for being in the house. It is so good to spend a little bit of time with you here on a Saturday. I know your time is valuable. I truly appreciate that. I hope you've had a chance to get your morning coffee or your afternoon lunch and that you are fully immersed in your Saturday ritual. And I hope it entails a lot of good music, good vibes with people whom you love and care for. Welcome to J4 Conversations. Basically, it's fathers having conversations about fatherhood themes, the importance of community and collegiality among fathers, but also a conversation about raising healthy, grounded, rooted, solid, independent sons, right? That is our responsibility to be a care provider for our beautiful seeds, whether they be daughters or sons. And today's conversation is about intentionality, being very intentional at certain stages of our beautiful seeds development, which can be correlated to certain kind of age sets, and then tying certain kind of rituals to those age sets. So before we begin, shout out to Mulatto Vanguard. Good to see you, brother. Thank you so much for always sort of being here in conversation, both posing questions, listening, but also allowing me to stretch my mindset, particularly in the space of biracial identity formation in the modern era, as compared to when I was a biracial kid, or I am a biracial kid coming of age, having to make decisions about cultural membership. And so it's been a very enriching conversation. In fact, mostly I would talk from an African American perspective, but here I've expanded my mind a little bit to talk from a perspective of both parenting black children, but also parenting biracial children. So thank you so much for a lot of energy that's been coming at the page for the last 2 days. In fact, we're almost upward at 900 views over the last 48 hours, largely in the video that we did called White Mothers and Their Biracial Black Sons, where two fathers, myself included, just kind of poured out, y'all, just kind of talked about our journey, our trials and our tribulations. And I went back and looked at it the other day, and it was very revealing, there was a lot of trials to membership, which I think underscores a lot of today's young people who are in the biracial space about, rejecting that requirement to go through trials and tribulations of proving membership. And so today's conversation is not to impose a particular value system on you, but to say whatever your value system is, beautiful parents, whatever your value system is, I'm offering a constructive, ritualistic, formulaic way to then present that to your beautiful seeds at a critical age of development. So, again, thank you guys for showing interest in the space. This is part two of a rites of passage conversation that I'm advocating be led at a family level. There are a lot of rites of passage programs that are institutionalized. We talked about those in the previous video. Black and biracial boys transitioning into a young adulthood. This is part two about actually setting up and initiating a ritual, a 5 week ritualistic process by which families can have high intentionality in offering certain subject matter, value affirmation, and speaking towards adult themes that are projecting what a beautiful young person is about to enter into. I'm recommending the age be 15 years old. I'm recommending 15 as the age where families have intentional ceremonial rites of passage program for their seeds. All right. Now, underscoring all of this, beautiful family, underscoring all of this, why do I feel that this is even important? Well, the page was created again to create healthy, grounded, solid sons, independent sons, but it was also to get at them in the terms of where they're developing relationship habits, where they're developing notions around intimacy, where they're developing thought processes around what it means to be a contributing adult person. And largely because in certain communities, our communities in particular, we're seeing a decline in marriage, right? That says something about how men and women, assuming heterosexuality, are interacting with each other, how they're engaging each other, how they're respecting each other, how they treat each other. And I know social media is sort of punctuating and pronouncing this in heightened kind of levels, but in the modern era, it seems like young people are having struggles finding true connected kinds of relationships. And so I wanted to have a voice point for sons as they navigate through these process. It's also an underscoring message to encourage men to plan fatherhood intentionally, to go in a particular kind of order. That means identifying someone whom you have high amorous interest in, going through a courtship process, some kind of relationship, getting to know each other, then intentionally choosing to advance the relationship towards some kind of commitment to each other in the form of marriage, what I would advocate for, and then to, after all of that, have high conversations around parenting, right? To make a baby out of preparation, planning, extensive conversation with your beautiful partner, and then make choices to get off birth control or to remove rubbers and make the baby by planning and not midnight passion. In our community, you'll hear data sets of 60, 70, 80% of children born to single parent households. But according to Black demographics, 51% of Black children are born to single parent homes. The elevated number is when you ask at the hospital, when you ask mom what is her marital status, and if she indicates I'm not married, then that becomes the elevated statistical data set. But that doesn't mean father's not present. Doesn't mean that they're not engaged, that the dad is not in the house. So the raw number, as far as I've seen, is 51% of our babies. That is a problem. That is a problem that requires intentionality at a certain stage of development for the beautiful sons as they begin to think about who and how they're going to move through relationships. They're at an age set 15 to 26, highly physically oriented. Their peer standing is high on their mind, and sex is high curiosity on their mind. After puberty, they have the capacity to produce a child, but oftentimes they don't have conversations about the importance and the significance of bringing a human being into this world. Even though biologically they're capable, biologically they have the sperm that can produce a child, it does not mean that psychologically they're ready. In order to assist in the readiness, I'm recommending high intentionality at a particular age set to prepare them for adult themes and realities that they are foreshadowing because of their age set. The 51% is a problem compared to 26% of all other human beings in a similar age set. They are raised by single parent homes. In our community, it's 51% beautiful family. That is a problem. That is a problem. Now, what do parents do when they have problems? What are parents' responsibility when they have problems or when they recognize that they're a part of an aggregate group? When you examine it or when you study it upon statistical lines and you say, hey, my membership in this group, I have affinity to it, I have affection to it, I see myself as a part of it. I look at data sets to see where we're healthy, where we're kind of good on par, and where we're problematic. And then how do you resolve that? How do you contribute solution with your life lived? How do you contribute solution with your life lived? One of the ways in which you can do that is to take parenting highly serious, but then also to elevate parenting beyond just nurturance, provision, care, and guidance, but to introduce ritual. In the previous conversation, we talked about naming as a critically important part, right? What do your sons and daughters get when they hear their name called? Well, do they get a sense of cultural pride and esteem from that? We talked about family prayers or family mantras, something that's recitated on a daily basis that again feeds them and fuels them in a positive way, right? So today we're talking about age, intentionality by parents, and I want to underscore this. And Mulatto, thank you so much for all those coming in. Please hit the like button. We're not booming in numbers, but that's okay. These are practical kind of things. These are not sensational. These are not controversial kinds of topics. But all communities, whether you be Black, Chicano, biracial, multiracial, Asian, or white, whatever the case may be, at some point, if you're like 91% of all living, breathing beings, you will one day produce a child, right? And it is more than just providing clothing and food. You have to be intentional in understanding their developmental phases. And also, if you want them to be a healthy, grounded adult, you have to do something intentional when they're in their teenage stages and even beyond. So, today I want to talk about the second part of the rites of passage conversation. The first part was the age set. Again, 15 is significant in puberty. It is also the age where they are going to want to get a driver's permit, take a very, very grown act of driving a 2-ton vehicle, right? To be out amongst the populace, driving this, beautiful luxury, but also a weapon in the wrong hands for someone that's not prepared. It's also a stage where they are beginning to date. They're getting permission to go out with people they have interest in. They're in social settings. They're still googly goggly eyed for each other. But 15, 16, depending on your family value system, is when they start to sort of date. And then also it's an assertion of independence where they want to get away from their mom and dad. They want to go be with their friends. And the car is high symbolism as a means by which they can then traverse and get out and go without the watchful, loving eyes of parents. So I'm recommending 15. A rites of passage is a situation that has a clear beginning, right? There's an initiation ceremony. It has an articulated duration of time. I'm recommending 5 weeks, right? And then at the conclusion, it is high celebration, high welcome, and it then elevates the status of the 15-year-old by giving them new opportunities and responsibilities, right? This does not happen normally in the broader society. The society is too large. We anoint new privilege based upon birthdays. You turn 16, you can drive. You turn 18, you can sign your own documents. You turn 21, you can go to the club. America initiates new responsibilities and rights based upon birthdays, okay? This is not enough. This is not enough to raise grounded, healthy, rooted children. You have to have some additional intentionality. You have to put them through something: celebration, initiation, duration of time, conclusion, celebration, newfound rights and responsibilities, assuming they mastered the lessons henceforth in between. Okay? The purpose of it is to create identity clarification. This is where it's critical for Black and biracial children. Whatever the family value is, if there's a biracial child and you have interracial parents and they want to raise the child to be biracial, moniracial in terms of core identity with a love for both parental sources, beautiful. If you want to raise them, which was kind of my journey, that they have more of a leaning towards Blackness, then that's your family values. Then you do that. But whatever your family values are, rites of passages are an intentional way of putting in front of them education, themes, talks, mentors, elders that can line up with what mama and daddy's values are, whatever they are. Okay. It also gives them a chance to connect to a community, a chance to practice character, a chance to create accomplishment by doing things, task completion, and then to have the ensuing confidence that comes out of that, but then to also introduce them to adult themes. And again, core to adulthood is self-examination, right? To initiate something, to step back and evaluate its outcomes, to then reconfigure your plan, to make adjustments, and to reinitiate. Whether it's relationships, school, employment, friendships, whatever the case may be, all of us at the close of our night can think about what we did, what we initiated. We then sit back reflectively and say, how did it go? We evaluate it. We then say, hey, the outcomes were satisfactory or the outcomes were problematic. What adjustments do I need to make? And that is called a new plan. And then you begin the new day by reinitiating in terms of whatever is important to you and critical to you. Rites of passage can introduce those things. Also beginning to plant seeds around healthy money management, budgeting, talk extensively about courtship, right? How do you treat a person? What are the protocols? What is the pay situation? What are the expectations? If you're going to ask a young lady out and she's under 18, do you ask the father? Do you ask the mother, right? Just these respectability kinds of dynamics, right? I'm not recommending what those are because those are your family's business. Those are your family's choices, but I'm recommending there be some extensive, exhaustive conversation around what it means to be a young man who has in between their legs the possibility to produce a child, And we already have too many unplanned babies in the world, and I'm recommending some strong conversations around intentionally what that process ought to look like. It ought to look like you having a partner before you produce a child. And so these are chances to have those conversations. And then also, what are the nuances of marriage its beauty, its complexity, the role of physicality, intimacy in marriage, the role of emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence, companionship, camaraderie, all those kind of things. And then also the dynamics of being a father, right? What does it take to be a pop? What do you want to do? What do you want to replicate from your own father, right? What are some things that you saw in your dad that you completely felt were problematic, and how do you not replicate that particular cycle, right? This is a chance to say, hey, be the father you wish your father was, right? And all of this beauty, problematic, and complexity. But to have candid conversations with your beautiful seeds about being in the stature, in the poise, in the identity of father, and then finally other adult kinds of things that they need to be mindful of, from insurance, change in the oil, taxes, all that kind of stuff. So those are some things I'm recommending that a rites of passage will entail. Let me pause there. Beautiful community, thank you guys so much for joining in. I'm chopping with you on a Saturday about intentional parenting of Black children, assuming they're of monoracial, two parents, one Black, one the other Black, or a new community that I'm immersing myself in, at least rhetorically and conversationally, and also listening in. If you're a part of the growing percentage of interracial families, right? When I was born, 1968, there was only about 3% interracial couples. It was illegal in some states in 1967. You fast forward to today, almost 18% of folks are choosing to marry across cultural lines. That is a trend that will continue. And as a result of that, there will be more and more biracial children. And so families, interracial couples, at some point, you're going to talk about, hey, I've produced something that is not culturally like myself, right? I'm monolithic, mom's monolithic, yet you're producing a biracial child that will move through the world and have decisions to make about membership. You all are going to have to talk about how you're going to educate your beautiful seed, your biracial seed, in terms of how they identify. You will be the catalyst of family values. You will be the initiator of exposure. You will be the underscore of loving both love sources. You will be the articulator of societal inequities and discriminations and colorism and whatever the case may be. You will be the initiator of that. Now, as they go out into the society and they see certain things and they get treated certain kind of ways and they get affirmed in different kind of ways, they will ultimately come to their own conclusion about self-identity, but where they begin will largely come from the kind of influence and shaping factors that you all as their parents put in front of them. Okay, so that's a critical piece and opportunity within the rites of passage program. Okay, so here it is. Let me know if you got any questions out there listening in, or disagreements or thoughts. All right. So a rites of passage program is an opportunity for ritual engagement. I like ritual. In my rites of passage program, coming of age largely through a fraternity when I was 19 years old, I was introduced to a lot of ritual that sets well with my personality type. In the family-driven rites of passage program, you have opportunity for 2 to 3 generational engagement, right? One generation is the child, right? That's the center, the 15-year-old. The next generation is mama and daddy and aunties and cousins who are also at that level. But the third generation is going to be grandparents, right? Or grand uncles and grand aunties, right? I think a rites of passage program has significant benefit to it when you have multiple generations who are a part of it, in essentially because you have multiple voices and you have history, in the grandparent. You have storytelling, you have connecting to broader nuclear family trees and dynamic in the grandparent. You have the core provider in the parent, and they are the guiders, they're the influencers, they're the value disseminators, right? And then you have the recipient of the content in the beautiful seed. And so you have this layering that goes on that provides history, current management of life and progress and coming of age. And then you have the recipient being the beautiful child, right? All right. What do we have here? Mulatto rites of passage is essential for young males transitioning into manhood. Absolutely, absolutely. Vanguard, I'd be interested to see, for one, There aren't many intentional rites of passage programs out there, right? The military is a pronounced one. Not everybody pathways that. Some religious institutions will have them. Other things like sports and martial arts have elements of ritual and progression, right? Those kind of dynamics. But as a broader society, if you don't tap into those kinds of institutions, where else will it occur, right? Where else will it occur? In my talking with beautiful young people, rites of passage are foreign kind of concepts for them. It's not sort of a part of their vernacular, of their vocabulary. And so I'm attempting, along with others, to say, hey, to be a parent is to know at some point you're going to have to manage and initiate a rites of passage program for your beautiful seed at a particular kind of age. That's something that we as families need to be mindful of and to prepare for. I understand that it can feel psychologically daunting. One can feel like they're not adequate or prepared to do it. But beautiful mom and dad, you are already transmitting thoughts into your beautiful seeds. You are already transmitting values into your beautiful seeds. You are already influencing who they are in terms of their character. I'm saying just simply take that, put a little structure and organization around it, and feel free to just go to make it up. Your beautiful seed will be better for it. Your beautiful son will be better for it. Thank you for that, mulatto. Where we got? I see biracial vanguard. I think I think that brother's been in here before. Salute mulatto vanguard. We are creating a path for all biracial people. Okay, again. So biracial vanguard, certainly mulatto vanguard. When they get of age, if they don't have children already, I know mulatto doesn't. Biracial vanguard, I'm not sure if they do, but when they get of a parenting age and they produce their child, hopefully with their partner of whatever choosing they decide, and that baby gets to a certain age, I'm recommending 15, that they will advance their values, right? We're creating a path for all biracial people. So their orientation and value assertion and what education they put in front of them will affirm their particular value. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. The other two parts is there's elements of formality, right? Any kind of ritual have an element of formality. It won't rest exclusively or dominantly in formality, but anytime something formal is present, it requires the young person to tighten up a little bit, to kind of lean in a little bit, and to know that they're getting ready for something significant that will largely be memorable and a pride moment for them, right? It'll be a lot of future family conversation. Remember when you did, baby, right? And so there's formality provides that. And then finally, humbleness, right? Humbleness on the part of the 15-year-old to recognize that I'm about to go into something of significance. I'm about to sort of yield myself to learning, to instruction, to challenges, both physical and mental. And I'm here for it. And I'm doing this in the trusting, loving embrace of my family, okay? Of my family. All right. So, duration 5 weeks. Pick a day. Pick a day of the week for the rites of passage activity. Pick a day where there's minimal distraction. Maybe it's a weekend or an evening, whatever the case may be. But pick a day, right? Set aside an hour. Look at the calendar well in advance. Maybe you do it over the summer where they don't have school obligations or work around work schedules. Talk to mom, talk to dad, talk to grandparents, talk to whoever else you think you'd want to be a part of the rites of passage component and program, and just set aside, right? Let's say you arbitrarily said Sunday at 3 p.m. Sunday at 3 p.m. is when we are going to activate our rites of passage program. Okay. If you pick 5 weeks, including the initiation ceremony, it will only require 6 meeting points. Rites of passage can be seen daunting, but think of it this way: 6 hours. Just 6 hours of intentionality at a unique age set that will benefit your 15-year-old when they're 45 years old, dealing with grown, full out responsibilities. This little 6 hours at that critical age of 15 will have tremendous impact upon the human being they are: father, a friend, a career person, entrepreneurial, person that's working their passion, right? Husband, whatever the case may be, is critically tied to this opportunity of 6 hours. You can do it, beautiful families. You can do it. All right, where are we at? Okay, so parental responsibilities. Parental responsibilities. You need to identify a convener. A convener means to convene, to bring the people together, to bring this process together. Okay. Now, I'd recommend that it be, whoever kind of is most comfortable, within the family, whether that's mom, whether that's dad, right? Whatever the case may be. Or if you want to pick someone within the extended nuclear family, perhaps there's someone that's comfortable in these spaces or more comfortable. Maybe it's an uncle, maybe it's an older brother or something like that. Pick a convener, someone who has some organization skills, someone who has some ability to facilitate an agenda, someone that can command the respect of the 15-year-old, right? Someone that can has the appropriate amount of love, but also care and can challenge, right? You got to take a lot of time in thinking who the convener is. If you're not comfortable with someone within the immediate family, then maybe it's someone from the community, right? Someone that you have respect for, that's shown care for your family, certainly has shown care for the 15-year-old. You could go to an outward source to also serve as the convener. And then you want to plan and manage the experience. This is some preemptive work that you'll want to do before the first day of the initiation ceremony. So with the convener and with the right people, certainly to include mom and dad, and talk about, well, what values do we want to underscore? What messages do we want to articulate as non-negotiables? What tasks, what challenges, what things are we going to put in front of the 15-year-old? You want to think about that in advance and develop your curriculum. Develop your curriculum on paper, share that with the appropriate folks, get input, and then also share it with the 15-year-old. Let them know, hey, this is what we're about to put you through. We're going to do it in an hour on Sunday at 3 o'clock for the next 5 weeks, right? This is what we're going to put you through. And on the back end, this is what we think it will do for you in terms of development into your adulthood or into your manhood. But that's going to require planning and managing the experience. All right. Biracial Freddy Krueger, how are you? Here. Wonderful. Glad you're here. All right, we're talking about rites of passage programs, 15 years old. Then you want to create the name. You want to create the name of the rites of passage program. It could be the Vanguard rites of passage program. It could be the Freddy Krueger rites of passage program. But whatever it is, give it a name. Give it a name. Because when you give something a name, you birth it, right? If it's just rites of passage, that's in the abstract. If you just say when you're 15, we're going to put you through a little something, that's still in the abstract. But if you say, hey, 15-year-old, we're about to put you through the vanguard of coming of age process, right? The family vanguard, whatever it is. But put some ceremony around it, put some significance under it, speak to it respectfully, speak to it loftily, right? So that the 15-year-old like, man, I'm about to get into something right here, right? So give it a name that reflects meaning, reflects family values, reflects identity, reflects pride, whatever the case may be. And all of a sudden it begins to birth itself. It begins to have legs, right? And then inform the family of the intention. When you inform the family, what you're doing is you're holding yourself accountable. If you tell the family, the nuclear and extended family, hey, we putting Mulatto through his Vanguard rites of passage when he turns 15, the Sunday after his birthday. We're going to do this. All of a sudden, not only have you given it a name, the beginning of life, but then you've given it expectation, because the family's going to be like, hey, we still moving on that? What's going on that? What we doing, right? They'll do that in their fun family kind of way. But all of a sudden, once you profess it, once you put it out into the world, you're then held accountable to it, right? Your articulation of what I'm going to do is now in the ears and minds of people who know you and love you, and they're going to hold you accountable to that, right? And it also builds ceremony, it builds welcome, it builds hype, and it builds excitement, okay? And then finally, plan the introduction in initiation. Pick the date, pick the setting, pick the vibe, pick the environment, and invite family and friends. The initiation ceremony should be a chance where it's like a family gathering. The same people you would invite to Thanksgiving, the same people you invite to Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate, but that nuclear family and very close friends, that's who you would want to invite, okay? So it is a festivus occasion, but it's not tied to anything national holiday oriented. It's tied to you doing a seminal act of parenting, and that's intentionally training your beautiful seed for future adulthood. All right. All right. I see some folks in here. They shouting out each other. Um, to be kind of concise here, when it comes to the identity formation, which is critical at age of 15, and if you are leaning towards orienting your child to a Black cultural experience, well, there's ample example of that, ample literature, ample curricular for those kinds of things, right? But the biracial space is emerging. It's kind of blossoming. It's sort of coming of age. It's in formation phase, right? As I engage it, it's beautiful from an anthropological, sociological stance to see the emergence of a new identity, right? So you're also going to, as parents, as interracial parents, you're going to want to find spaces on the YouTube or in the literature and the research that's talking about biracial identity formation, right? And so the golden sphere is a space out there where young people are chopping it up and going through growth and angst and all that beautiful stuff. But begin to research it, because if your value system as an interracial parent is to raise your beautiful seed to have a strong, healthy, rooted sense in biracialness or multiracialness, you're going to need content. You're going to need subject matter. You're going to need vocabulary. You're going to need language. You're going to need gestures that sort of represent and tell them the beautiful story of all things that they are. And so begin to research out. Look at some of these folks in the chat box and check out their pages and see where their spirit and where their heads are and what they're dealing with, because you're going to need folks who are on the cusp of asserting identity, and they will have influence or at least information should you want to raise your child in the biracial space. And as we talked about, there are more and more biracial children that are going to be produced, and the question of cultural landing or cultural identity is going to change from my era. It's going to change from my era. In my era, there are very small percentages of biracial kids. 1% of children were biracial in 1970, upwards of 10 million, 10%, 33 million today. And those babies are going to have vastly different kinds of questions that they're asking. And mama and daddy, you need to be prepared for it. You need to be prepared for it. All right. Okay, so the initiation ceremony. So what I'm going to do now is share the initiation ceremony and what you need for it. Then I'm going to pause there. I'm going to open up the chat to see if y'all have any questions around what I shared. Do you see the value in the Rites of Passage program? Did you go through something comparable or similar? When it comes to the identity formation, the values that parents assert into their curriculum that talks about culture and those kind of things, maybe some recommendations in that space. And then should that, when that exhausts itself, we'll open it up to see if there's any other kind of conversations, input, broadly speaking, from the folks that are here. Fair enough? All right. Appreciate y'all rolling with me. The initiation ceremony. You want to present the child, right? Family's all gathered, child's in his room, mom's room, whatever the case may be, right? You want to formally bring your child out and let the family clap, whistle. Yeah, right. Ceremoniously, right? Just don't have the child in the house by answering the door, greeting people when they come in. No. Put him in the room until it's time. Y'all set that joint for Sunday at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock comes and you bring that baby out. You bring them out, right? When they come out in advance, you want to I'll change it. Present the child. Parents at that point, baby's right there. Parent or the convener then speaks outwardly to the family. This is what the intention is. This is why we're doing it. This is why we feel it's important. This is what we're going to be doing. And this is what we want the outcomes to be. That way, the nuclear and extended family are clear as to what we're trying to do. And they will then posture and respect it, right? Because you're going to have silly younger brother. You're going to have silly younger sister. You're going to have crazy uncle who are going to want to make it playful, right? But no, you want to tighten them up. You want to say, hey, y'all, I understand that. We'll get to that once this is over. But at this particular moment, we're introducing our son, our 15-year-old, in the beginning of his manhood process, right? And this requires a certain kind of family, formality, and I need y'all to tighten up, right? So presenting your son has a way of doing that, but also the convener and also the parents speaking into it. And then you might even want to have one of the grandparents or the oldest person in the family also speak to the importance of the occasion. And then you can even go around where people can say, "Hey, good luck. We're excited for you. Take it seriously," right? And so you have family input, family pouring in to the 15-year-old who's being presented there. And then you want to present some materials. You want to present some the trinkets and the elements of the rites of passage program. So first thing I'd recommend is that you present a shirt, right? Something that is to be worn during the rites of passage program, right? That is the uniform, right? You go to work, you got a uniform perhaps. You go to school with a dress code, you have a uniform, right? By putting on the uniform, you're essentially saying, I'm entering in with a physical act of clothes and attire, that I'm putting my mind in a certain kind of space. I'm manifesting a certain kind of disposition, a demeanor, a way of being. I'm ready. Okay. So something that recognizes the uniform. It could be a shirt, it could be a collared shirt, it could be a dashiki, whatever your rhyme and rhythm is, but have a shirt that symbolizes when this is being worn, I am in the psychological and mental space of my rites of passage program. Okay. And it's worn on every occasion where the formal rites of passage is occurring. I'd also recommend you give them a keepsake, right? A box, a satchel, backpack. I wouldn't recommend that. That's too associated with this regular school kind of thing. But something that's a keepsake, something that they keep even into their adulthood, and when they look at it, they associate memories to it. Maybe that's something that the shirt goes into for safekeeping. But in the interim, the box or the satchel, something that's a keepsake, becomes something to gather all of the rites of passage material. It's what they will use to gather the material, the books that you've shared. Okay. The other thing is you want to introduce a book, right? A book selected by the parents for reading. This is the opportunity to underscore values, right? In your own process, hopefully you've come across books that spoke to you, books that resonated with you, told a particular story that you kind of had a sense of connection to, right? A story that makes sense for a 15-year-old, that introduces themes and ideas that are slightly above a 15-year-old level. That way they can have some mental grappling that they have to contend with, right? But introduce a book. Maybe it has anywhere from 6 to 10 chapters in it. That way you can break the chapters up over the 5-week increment. You require the son to do the reading. The convener and the parents, or whoever's going to be in the dialogue group, they also need to do the reading in advance. And they want to think intentionally that having read the chapters, what are we wanting to underscore? What lesson are we wanting to extrapolate? What value around identity do we want to support and assert as a value that the family has sort of signed off on and endorsed? The book is a critical kind of instrument that you'll build dialogue around. And again, dealing with larger themes, right? Back to what we talked about within the contents of a rite of passage, you should introduce adult themes, right? Self-examination, courtship, marriage, genuine friendship, raising children, caring for elders, think thoughts about death, right? Those kinds of things. And then, of course, other adult themes. Also, give them a notepad and a pen. I'd recommend you kind of get fancy on this if you can, if your economics permit. And then also something that symbolizes the rites of passage. It could be a token, something that's carried in their pocket, something that symbolizes family or the rites of passage. It could be a coin. It could be something small that perhaps granddad or grand uncle had, or mom had, or grandma had, right? Something that's a chance to generationally pass on. So when the 15-year-old holds it, he treats it with respect. He carries it and is mindful of it. He's trying to make sure he doesn't lose it, right? It could be a pocket watch or something, but something that symbolizes the rites of passage program itself. This also becomes a keepsake, a memento that reflects the importance of what the child just went through. And then finally, the last three things. Once you've presented all of the material and you've contextualized why you're doing this to the family, and the families then also had a chance to praise and welcome and encourage, you then need a gesture of willingness by the son. You need a gesture of willingness by the son to submit themselves to this process. I'm recommending poem recitation. In addition to reading the chapters, in addition to the physical and mental challenges that I'll talk about in the next session, the third session, you want an act of willingness on the part of the 15-year-old. Poem recitation is a nice, convenient, easy way, learning way by which to do that. Okay? So you'll give them the poem in advance. You'll say, commit this to memory. When I call upon you, you're going to come center stage. You're going to become in front of the family and you're going to recite your poem. If they do this diligently, if they do this and they put the poem into long term memory, they will know that poem for the rest of their life. They will know that poem for the rest of their life. The poem ought to reflect family values around tenacity, identity, character, persistence, whatever the case may be, inspiration, aspiration, whatever the case may be. You pick the poem, the convener, and you pick the poem, but the baby then recites it. And that is the demonstration to the community, the nuclear family gathered, that I am willing to humble myself to this process. And I trust that you have my best interest in mind. And you're going to teach me about something reflective of the phase I am entering into, which is young adulthood, marked by the seminal act of puberty, that you can produce a child, yet you are still in a child mindset. There has to be something formal that takes you out of that and introduces you to heavy concrete adult themes. All right. Finally, distribute the week assignment, which will be another poem, the book chapters, and a physical task. And we'll share more on that in the next one. And then after that, hey, it's party time. After that, it's family time. However y'all like to celebrate, whatever y'all sip on, whatever y'all listen to, whatever games y'all play. But it ought to be a fun party kind of time after that. Young 15-year-olds still in their shirt. They got their book, they're flipping through it, they're overwhelmed, right? People are pulling them aside and talking to them, maybe they slipping them a few envelopes with a 20 in it or whatever the case may be. Grandparents are hugging and teasing a little bit, but it's a chance for the 15-year-old to feel center stage, but at the same time realizing they're about to get into something significant. All right, beautiful family. Thank you all so much for chiming in. We're at the 42 mark. That's what I wanted to share. I'm going to put the invite up. If there's someone that wants to come in and ask a question related to the presentation, and then we'll kind of go from there. And if there's no one that wants to come up, we'll simply wrap it up. I'd recommend that if you saw this and see value in it, that you go back and watch the first session where I talk a little bit more about what rites of passage programs, why they're important. That is called the Black and Biracial Boys Transition into Young Adulthood. This is part two, called Black and Biracial Teen Parenting with an underscore of intentionality. And then the third one is creating and managing physical and mental challenges. It's important that your sons go through challenge because they associate learning with accomplishment. And when they complete a task, that becomes a part of their sense of self, sense of pride, sense of personal pride. All right. We got Mulatto Vanguard in the house. Mulatto, how are you, brother? Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too. Good to hear you as well. Thank you.
Oh, let me get my headphones on. Say it again now.
Saying good to hear you and good to see you. Thank you. Is my
Yeah.
audio good?
Yeah, you're good. It was my headphones. I've done that in the past. Mulatto, thoughts on the subject? Do you see value in it? I know you're not a parent just yet, but thoughts and feedback or critique of the content.
Right, precisely. Yeah, I'm not a parent just yet, but I think it's very valuable. So I appreciate the information you're sharing. But what really stuck out, and like you just mentioned, was the whole rites of passage component. I know you just said, obviously, you made a clip, a video about that prior. So I'm going to go back and watch that again. But that's important, for young males transitioning into manhood. And I know for me, that was kind of an element that was missing from my upbringing.
Yeah.
So that one really, it's missing for a lot of us, right? I'm not the only one. So
Well,
it's
I would
not,
venture, yeah, I'd venture to say, unless you did the military or a mission or Boy Scouts or something like that, you didn't get it, and you simply birthdayed your way into adulthood. and there was no formal pause to say, hey, you're about to enter into something significant. Let me put you through something significant because you're about to enter into something significant. So you're absolutely right. There's very little formal transitional programming in the broader society. It's just too large. So parents at least have an opportunity to own it. Sorry to cut you off, brother.
Oh no, 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 you're good. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you said, just a broader society. There's no real structure to kind of impose those rites of passages for young males. But that's, I think, traditionally has always been a task that's supposed to be brought upon by the father and the kind of the patriarchy, or of the family unit, right? It's
Right.
typically the family within their culture and their traditions who kind of initiate that whole ceremonial event of the rites of passage. But you mentioned the Boy Scouts. I was a member of the Boy Scouts, and I do highly recommend it to people.
Hmm.
I know kind of the brand and image has been tarnished over the
Right.
past decade or so of the Boy Scouts, but I really found it was beneficial just because you learn these kind of survival skills, right? Pitching a tent, you know, uh, learning how to navigate in the wilderness, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, like you mentioned, that the Boy Scouts, I think, was kind of essential for a lot of my development, but I didn't really follow all the way through because I believe the final stage of the Boy Scouts is like the Eagle Scouts,
Eagle Scout. Right.
right? So I didn't make it all the way till that point, but I did spend, a few years actually within the ranks of the Boy Scouts. I'd say maybe 4 years or so. And I know for my own personal development, like I said, it was very beneficial.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Mulatto. Did anything I share seem like too daunting, too big of an ask? Do you think parents could really do this in some form of it? So that's the question I want to ask. But let me preface it by this: the more opportunities your son has a chance to be challenged to do something, and your daughters, and then deliver on it. That's just a little like it's just a drop into their confidence, into their esteem bank. And there is a correlation between healthy, grounded humanness that can manage their own life, that can critically think, and that can hold their own among groups and individuals is correlated to task completion when they were much younger, right? There's a sense of pride, or when you look out and say, I can do that, right? On the previous session, we talked about 8 things all sons should know how to do. But it wasn't just, you ought to do these things. It was to say that when you go out into the broader society and the society then puts things in front of you, you've seen it, you've experienced it, you've mastered it at your own rank, and that builds a certain kind of cachet that allows you to navigate in group and individual kind of settings. So task completion is critically important. So do you think this is doable from what you've heard?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, I think the task completion component is very, very important. And I could just bring up briefly, from my, observation, I'm a fan of mixed martial arts. So the abbreviation is MMA, so cage fighting essentially. And with that, there's a couple fighters I can mention. Frank Mir, who was a world champion. His father trained him as he was young in like karate, so he's always had his father, cage side, ring side, by his side, helping him through the years to
Mm-hmm.
become a champion. There's a younger man in LA or Long Beach. His name is AJ McKee, and he became a champion. And his father was a former fighter and trained him all the way. So like that's what I'm mentioning, when you kind of fall in line with the completing tasks, but then they have that kind of that fatherhood to assist them as an early age to help them complete the task. So into manhood, they can succeed.
No, you're absolutely right. I remember when my dad put me in martial arts. I must have been 7 or 8. I didn't really like it. I don't have a lot of memory of it. I should have stayed my butt in it because it's one thing, as a young child, as a young boy, to stand in front of another boy of your same similar size and y'all grab on each other, right, or begin to get physical with each other. There's high nervousness there, but when you realize you can go through that and hold your own, there's also again a sense of boy confidence that I think is of particular value and significant to go through. And then martial arts also has symbols, right? So you get the yellow belt, the blue belt, whatever the order is, and those become, I mean, it's just cloth, but for you, it's memories, it's symbols of achievement, it's symbols of advancement, right? And so it orients the child to say, hey, I can reach milestones And as evidenced by reaching milestones, I can reach other milestones, right? And this becomes an internal motivator to look outward in the broader society and say, whatever it is, whatever the difficulty lie ahead, my past demonstrates that I can do it in the present. And that's the currency and importance we need to establish in children, but particularly boys.
Definitely. Oh yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that. You know, just you can see the progression, right, with the whole belt, the ranking system. Most
Mm-hmm.
definitely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Mulatto, as someone who obviously is advocating for biracialness, do you have any thoughts or suggestions for parents of interracial parents of biracial children when they're like thinking about books or thinking about how to have the conversation about biracial identity? Does anything come to your mind? Have you come across anything?
Definitely. You know, what's helped me is just being well cultured, you know, mulatto cultured and being well versed. So it depending on your heritage and your background, be extremely, well versed in the identity and the experiences of those particular groups. So, like for me, having a kind of German American, background from my mom, that means I would obviously look up philosophers and historical people within that realm, and then also having an African American side I would do the same there, right? I would look so just as far as books and material, just being well versed and versatile as far as examining all these different, elements of history, culture, and society, not just sticking to one lane. So that's my advice for these parents.
Now, well said. I'd recommend, at least in the German space, Martin Berber, Berber, I think. He was a philosopher that Dr. King studied a lot, and the beloved community that Dr. King talks about comes from grappling with the I it versus the I thou. Right? It's a way of looking at other human beings. If you look at them from an I as the center and they as an it, that leads to objectification of another person. You just see them as objects. If you see them as objects, well, you can do horrible things to them. But if you see it from an I thou relationship, that is more of a we mindset. And he then transferred that to his own definition of the beloved community. But his thinking and his own religiosity was largely influenced by the German philosopher Martin Berber. So, yeah.
Well, his name actually comes from a German
Martin Luther,
evangelical.
yeah. Right,
Yeah, so there you
right.
go.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Mulatto, any other questions? I don't know if biracial Freddy Krueger is here or biracial Vanguard. You guys are more than welcome to come up.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. I don't know about that dude, biracial Vanguard. It looks like he's trying to hijack my name or something. I don't know, man. But biracial Freddy Cougar, she's actually, I don't know if she wants to share and come up, but she's actually a parent. So I
oh,
think this discussion is probably extremely relevant for her. Yeah, I'm not a parent yet, so I'm 33 years old, just kind of a bachelor, trying to live my life and have fun. But I think this is very beneficial for me. So in the future, obviously, when I'm at that point, I have already acquired a bunch of knowledge that's extremely useful.
I have no doubt that you will. You're a curious young man. Biracial Freddy Krueger, I'd love if you are a parent to if you've thought about these themes or experienced the rites of passage or see value in it or have questions on how something could be implemented. I'd love to hear your voice on the subject matter, or if you have thoughts on how to convey biracial identity values to your beautiful seeds. Love to hear that because, obviously, rites of passage program can apply to any community. Certainly, everything I shared can be manifested and led by a monolithic Black family, but also as more and more biracial children are born and they're at this crossroads of identity formation, their beginning should come from their parents. A lot of times, uh, at least in my day, the interracial couple didn't really quite know what it meant to be biracial, so they just kind of let us figure the joint out, right? They cautioned us in certain areas. In my community, there was a leaning towards blackness, of which I pathway through and am tremendously indebted to that pathway. But a young person born in 2020, excuse me, 2010, whatever the age might set, they have a lot bigger community, a lot bigger visual ability to see more people that share a multitude of identities such as themselves. And so they have broader options, right? But even just because population growth is there, doesn't necessarily imply deliberate culture. Culture will eventually come out of that. It'll just because the numbers will dictate it to be so. But to be thoughtful and intentional, which I recommend for any culture community, to me is much better than just haphazardly letting a person go through their human phases of development and just hoping positivity comes out on the back end. A lot of
De- Definitely, sir. Yeah, that's kind of been the main point of discussion for me that I've talked to a couple people, we obviously, but we're still trying to, figure things out. I kind of feel like, the parents, so my parents, were they really equipped, because they didn't really teach us, right, how to
right,
navigate the society with these different
right,
groups. And it was it really their responsibility? I don't know. I mean, who I think it is. Obviously, they're the parents, right? That's why your platform, your program is very essential. But my, I don't want to be sound confusing, but yeah, my story is very similar with a lot of people, right, who share my background. Our parents didn't equip us to navigate
hmm
the society and the, like you said, the kind of uh, racial, you know, uh, I don't know how to put it. Yeah, the way that things are operating in America, especially in other societies, it could be a little different, but the
hmm
nuances, but within race in America, it's very complex. And my parents didn't equip me really for becoming a man and how to deal with navigate society, right? So like, particularly with your generation, there wasn't really an option for us mulatto people to kind of create our own lane. Most people chose the monolith, right? That was the easiest, well, not the easiest route, but that was the route that was essentially handed to you to take. You have to
yeah,
follow through with these steps. You have to comb your hair a certain way, talk a certain way, and
haircut, haircut.
then, I mean, that's the symbol, right, that we always hear about.
hmm
But yeah, that's the thing. So I think it's very different today. And I don't know if these parents, these interracial couples, if they have the knowledge, to essentially, help their child be extremely successful as far as identity and navigating society. But I think your platform is very helpful with your experience and your background. But I don't want to sound confusing. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. But you also have to understand that I don't mean that pejorative. You have to no, but as you talk, you have to understand that you're the community that you're a part of, and you guys are kind of going through growing pains and whatnot. This is new, right? This is new in a modern era. You've always had mixed community formation, right? But you haven't had it with these kinds of circumstances. So while vocabulary is broadening, while research is sort of being put out there by the academics, you guys are on the ground level, right? You will wake up and go to sleep with partners, and you will produce children, and you got to do this in real time, and you don't have the niche space that has been within a blackness, for example, for centuries. You're growing up asserting a new identity without a blueprint ahead of you, right? So there's going to be uncertainty. There's going to be, confusion, right? I would say this: when I wanted to ensure that my six children who are biracial presenting had a healthy groundedness in blackness, was I made sure they were around black examples of excellence, right? And so one thing that interracial marriages can do is find examples of interracial marriage excellence, right? And that can begin in your own home and around your own dinner table. So hopefully you have a broad social circle, but within that social circle, perhaps you have other interracial couples with biracial, multiracial kids. And as much as you can intentionally bring each other around each other, where kids can see examples of themselves in other individuals, parents can kind of support each other while having social, fun, engaging kind of opportunities, and they can dialogue. They can dialogue around the new nuance. So it can be as simple as that, as a first level strategy, is to ensure you have a comprehensive, robust friend circle that represents your community or particular marital configuration, and find times to fellowship among each other and let the lessons come organically as they may.
Exactly, precisely like you mentioned. We're in the growing pains. This is all new to a lot of us, and a lot of people. What I've come to understand the past couple weeks within the space is they're not as comfortable. They've never been in a situation where they could kind of coordinate and galvanize around other similar biraciality, right? Other folks who are biracial. So this is kind of a new thing for a lot of us,
Yeah,
But
I'm go ahead, Milan, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, your show.
I said a little bit earlier on that as I'm observing, it's a wonderful anthropological, sociological undertaking, right? To see the immersion of identity in this technological space, right? Most times people tell a culture's formation, they tell it hindsight. They tell it through anthropology, through research, through discovery, through ancient texts, right? But but never have we been able to watch it, in terms of its growing pains, its highs, its lows, its infighting, its outward attacks, whatever the case may be, right? So if this has sustainability, and I think it does, I talked about the 9 criteria. One of them is that the trajectory of more and more interracial communities is just going to grow, and inevitably, as groups get large, they seek a sense of agency. And so, as I'm watching it, all cycles have sort of their ebbs and flows, right? But we both know at some point your rootedness in a culture cannot come in just defending against an external perceived threat or nemesis. At some point, it has to have calculated intentionality that has tangible elements to it going forward that the community can anchor around, right? It just can't spin in critique of something outward. It has to have destination points that it can go to and psychologically connect to and tell stories and history around to build history, right? History is post event, right? You predict it as a future action or a future opportunity, right? But then the time comes, you experience it, and then as time goes by, it becomes history. History is something that anchors culture, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. You put that well, extremely well. Thank you for that. Yeah,
Yep.
and also just I'll lastly add, what I want to do as well is do more research within the history. Like a lot of people in the space are talking about the Blue Vein Society, which is definitely new to me. It's my understanding. I want to look more deeper into the Talented Tenth and stuff like that. So I mean, we do definitely have a history within America, the context of these communities. But a lot of us have just been absorbed by the black monolith, is what I'm coming to understand. And
Yeah.
so, go ahead.
No, 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 no. Finish your thought. My bad.
Well, I was just going to say now that like you said, the numbers, the trajectory, it kind of warrants a different stance. And so, a lot of us today, we love and appreciate ourselves. We look ourselves in a mirror and we want to continue to build upon ourselves. So, we are, accepting our biraciality and moving forward with that. We're not technically chasing the monolith on either side. I mean, if we do find a partner from whatever community, I mean, it is what it is, right? Whatever's the best fit for us. But a lot of us, we look at ourselves and we galvanize in the space, and we like who we are, and we're accepting of that. So it's definitely, there's a historical component that I think a lot of us, we need to research so we can learn from the past and what these kind of mulatto societies did, right?
Yeah, yeah. One question I'll ask off subject, if I may. Um, so when I just kind of went with my prediction and future, and then it becomes history, I was speaking of kind of a now going forward. But I've often heard in some of the conversations a reclamation, those are my words, of historical figures who were biracial, mulatto, or multiracial. As you tell your story in a modern time and you claim those figures, the talented tenth is a Du Boisian concept. I'm not familiar with the Blue Vein Society in particular there, but certainly there's historical pockets of biracial gathering and identity assertion. If you reclaim historical past, how do you reconcile the fact that a lot of their work was done on behalf of a black culture, or do you? Or do you?
That's what we've definitely come to understand now when we're comparing notes. We're like, we look at Charles Drew, we look at Thurgood Marshall, we look at W.E.B. Du Bois, we look at a lot of these historical figures, and
Mm-hmm.
all their work and efforts was for the monolith. And today, as a society, as a group, as we look at ourselves and we galvanize, We want to develop something that benefits and serves us moving forward for our future. Does that make sense? Instead of serving the monolith, we embrace ourselves and want to pursue that in simpler
Yeah,
terms.
yeah. No, no, yeah. If you have a defined, growing biracial culture, you definitely will advocate for your community, and you will exalt heroes and sheroes who do work on behalf of your community. Yeah, that you can see any culture would do that. I don't think biracial would be different in that regard. It's just a point of curiosity for me because inevitably you'll tell a story that will include historical biracial, mulatto, multiracial people, but those people lived a life very much championing black progress, success, and achievement. And if the new community is championing biracial achievement, how does it navigate or negotiate sort of cultural ownership of historical biracial people who were perhaps more mulatto in their orientation for historical and obvious reasons?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a development, the growth and development, and that's kind of the way I see it. Because obviously, our most of us in this space are kind of prior, black identified, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's obviously a big part of our heritage. So we're just embracing our uniqueness at this point and moving forward. And then, of course, we will develop more of these, historical figures that are actually being developed right now. I mean, you think you'll hear my name in the future, so and there's a lot of us you'll hear, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
we're in that developmental stage, right? Like you said, this is a whole brand new sociological experiment. This is all brand new to a lot of us. We're trying to learn and develop ourselves. So this is part of the process.
Brother, I have no doubt that your name will be mentioned among others if this continues to build out. As I always say, though, brother, please make that break with love. And to become something new does not require burning down the historical house. My man, those are my thoughts.
Oh, definitely. I agree with you. Just one last question before I jump off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The gentleman in your picture, you have the four men.
yeah.
You had a conversation with the gentleman, the older gentleman. I don't know what his name is.
In
In
this
the
picture?
the picture in your screen on your computer screen.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
J4, two
J4, yeah.
fathers, the
Yep,
two fathers, two sons. So the other
yep.
father, not you, but the other gentleman.
Hmm.
Would you be interested in inviting him back on your platform for a discussion? Because I liked listening to a discussion you guys had prior. That's what kind of brought me to your channel. You had a conversation about him, talking about your experience growing up, and him as well. I think he might be a little younger than you, but I really liked his presentation. So I'd like to hear his experience as well.
Yeah, you're talking about
He's a
the two.
coach, I think.
Yeah, you're talking about two fathers, two sons. I'm one of the fathers. He's the other father. You're
Hmm.
talking about the conversation we did called "White Mothers and
Yes,
Their Black Biracial Sons." Their
yes,
biracial
sir.
black sons. Yeah, yeah. I'll definitely let him know that that's been requested. When we founded this channel, he and I and our two sons, we put out most of the content, but life gets busy for 18, 19-year olds. And then, Gene has a major senior level position that is kind of taking him out. So, but I wanted to
Yeah,
keep it going. So I'll let him know that, yeah, that you found value or insight, his words to be insightful, and perhaps we can have another conversation.
definitely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like I said, I'm not a father or anything. I will be in the future, but I just enjoyed his perspective and your perspective and how I can relate to your upbringing. I think that's very beneficial for a lot of us out here. But thank you, sir, for letting me join the platform today.
No, Malad, I always appreciate the way you come in and add value. And as a future father, please do that out of preparation with a partner that you plan to have a baby with. Wear them condoms, baby.
Thank you, sir.
All right, now, beautiful family. Thank you guys so much. If you see value in the conversation subject matter, both in the biracial, black, or parenting space, please take a look at the video that should be popping up here. Tell a few folks about us and subscribe. Thank you guys for joining us. The next session will be the mental and physical challenges that should be integrated or built into rites of passage programs. Peace and love.